Welcome to the MVP podcast, where we talk about anything NBA. I'm Sam Holcroft, alongside Geigh and Payton Thompson. Before we begin, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Momentum MVP, follow our Facebook page at MVP Momentum Podcast, and check us out on YouTube at MVP Momentum Podcast. So today we're going to talk about the in-season NBA tournament and the new NBA rest rules. So these are two of the biggest rules that have came over this offseason. So we'll start off with the in-season tournament. So you're going to have 4 group play games where you have, there's going to be 6 divisions of 5 teams. You're going to play each team once. So you're going to have 4 group play games, and there will be a total of 8 teams that advance to a knockout round, which will also include the semifinals and championship being held in Las Vegas. So when you guys first heard about the in-season tournament, which they've been talking about for a couple of years now, after the format came out and everything, what was your initial reaction?
I was hoping that it had something to do with record. I was hoping that they didn't lean too much into the money, because if we got to be honest, it's nice to win this tournament, but it would be much nicer to move up in the standings somehow for the actual NBA playoffs. It worked well for soccer, the premier. What is it? What is the cup? What is the mid-season cup for soccer?
No idea.
I couldn't tell you. I don't watch soccer.
Yeah, there's a mid-season cup for soccer, and I guess they're trying it out. But I don't know. As long as they had it tied up with the record, I wasn't gonna be so too that upset. So.
Yeah, for me, to be honest with you, I don't think that I'm on one side or the other. I think for me, it adds a little bit of extra, I guess, incentive for the NBA players when they play these tournament games to have a little bit of extra edge to the games. But, overall, I kind of think, I see this as just kind of an experiment for the first year. We'll kind of see how the teams match up, how much the games really matter, and how much the actual tournament itself ends up mattering to the players. But I'm a little bit more interested to see what the players think about the actual tournament themselves, because I feel like that's what matters. If the players don't really care about the tournament and actually competing at a slightly higher level than a regular season game, then I don't really think it matters too much. But if the players are really into it and they're really competitive with it, I think it'll mean a lot to the viewership. But for me, I think it's going to be a lot of the younger teams that want to kind of prove something to the older teams in this tournament, because they may not have a chance to make the playoffs, or even if they may have a chance, it's kind of like their tune-up to the playoffs, So I think in that way it can be interesting, but I'm not really sure how much teams are really going to take it seriously, because at the end of the day, we all know, the players know, the front office staff and coaches know, championship is what matters ultimately. So we'll kind of see how the players take it, and that's kind of what I'm seeing of it this year.
Yeah, when I first heard of an in-season tournament, I just didn't really think much of it. I was like, it's probably not going to happen. But they want to make regular season games matter, because over the last, you could even say 6 to 8 years, we have seen a lot more stars starting to rest. And we'll talk about rest rules here in a little bit. But before they even started talking about rest rules, they implemented this in-season tournament. And I feel like that this was a way to kind of get those star players to make sure you play these regular season games and make regular season games matter. So the only thing that I have an issue with is you only play 4 games that count as a regular season. I would have liked to see you, of your 82 games, I feel like 8 of them should matter. And they're having this championship, mid-season championship, not even 2 months into the season. So I feel like if you prolong it, so maybe you have the Christmas Day game, that middle game, maybe that's the championship game, but then that just ruins television. And because what if you have a team that's already slated to play on Christmas Day or whatever? But I do feel like it was a way to make regular season games more meaningful, just because also the season's so long. They play October, November, December, April, January, February, March, April. That's 6 months of regular season. So how can you make just a normal Tuesday or Friday night game mean something? Put it on national television and make it worth something. And that's this midseason tournament. So I don't like that you only play 4 group play games and single elimination. I'm cool with you. You can't make it a series because that'd be too long. Basically, your 82 games for a regular season would be this midseason tournament.
So wait, so if you get eliminated, then you don't so it's group play and then it's what is it, semifinal, or it jumps from quarterfinal, right? Quarter, semi, and then champ.
So yep, it's a group play. So you play your 4 games. If you are the winner of your division, which there are 3 in the West, 3 in the East, you get in, and then there's 1 wild card, which goes on by point differential and then points scored, depending on whoever that wild card is. And then it's a knockout, which is a quarterfinal, and then the semifinal and championship.
Yeah, actually, I don't think I'm feeling this, man. I think there's just a little bit too much this and that for me, to be honest. If it was just a little bit more simplified and maybe it was due to record and then these teams played in a weekend play kind of thing, I would be a little bit more willing to kind of accept I guess the structure of it, but it just seems like it's something that's going to become more of a nuisance than it becomes a form of entertainment. But yeah, man, I don't know. It just seems very experimental, and I just don't really know if I like the sound of where it's going.
I'm trying to think so I'm trying to think of how I could how would you would exploit the thing, because if I'm trying to win, what is there any incentive to lose? If you lose, you play against the other losers, but then you lose against people who are in your division. So the fact that you get to play against better players or better teams who you can have the opportunity to maybe get a win above them, that's probably the incentive right there, because that could come back to haunt you. If imagine the Celtics and the Bucks, have to meet each other in the semifinal, then they're forced to play each other in the semifinal. So you kind of have to win that game. Otherwise, it's gonna haunt you back when playoff time comes. If you guys are really still neck and neck, I mean, you put them a game below you, and on top of that, you get a game on top of them.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Imagine, I don't know if you could necessarily see this as an incentive or de-incentive, but imagine if you were a team, let's just take the West B for example. Imagine if you were a team like the Clippers or the Nuggets that feel like you have a pretty good chance to make the playoffs and you're not really too worried about this in-season tournament. Imagine if you knew that as long as you don't really care about this game, you could have another game where you play the Rockets or, maybe the Pelicans if they're not healthy, and they're probably not going to have their full team. So then you have 2 back-to-back Friday night games where you can at least rest one starter, where that's one game in the week you don't have to play necessarily both your starters, both your all-star starters, depending on the specific team. That's just an example, but I feel like you could also kind of exploit that too. Maybe like a younger team, they would feel a little bit more inclined to give it their all, whereas like a team like the Clippers, Lakers, maybe the Warriors would not really feel that way. Maybe the Warriors feel like they don't need to win this tournament because the Warriors have multiple championships under their belt, so maybe they're like, let's just not really care too much about this game. We play the Spurs next week with Victor. He might be sitting as well. Then we can get a win there if we want, or we can just really
I don't
take
know.
this, brief rest.
I just think it's really good for head to head. Yeah, if I see it, it's really good for head to head because you're gonna be playing the best teams, right? Unless the other teams tank, then I guess you can have a sorry team have the head to head to you, and you just take a loss.
Yeah.
But why just take a loss? The only way you don't let a better team get a head to head over you is if you lose to a weaker team that you don't care about. Like, let's say that, the Rockets, like, sorry, Payne, but like you got a team in the very bottom like the Rockets, and the Denver Nuggets are like, you know what, we're gonna lose to the
Yeah,
Rockets. How about that? And
yeah,
they lose to the Rockets, and then they get to play some sorry team there, but I guess they went down in the standings, but they don't actually lose a game against like, the Suns or something who are like still playing. But if two good teams meet each other, you better believe that, if they're both in the same conference, they're going to be wanting to have that game above, because you don't just drop a game.
yeah.
So what I imagine is, that lower seeded teams might just tank, might just drop out, and I think the higher seeded teams actually will try pretty hard.
I think that it could maybe be the inverse way too.
Yeah.
Like the top teams may not try as hard, especially against those lower teams, because I mean, we talked about the West B, which has the Nuggets, Clippers, Pelicans, Mavericks, and Rockets. Now, all of those teams could be potentially, that play in or playoff teams. But like the Nuggets, like maybe they rest MPJ against the Rockets, or maybe Jokic sits that day. But like against the Clippers, they probably might have a healthier roster. So I think that, it depends on that. Whereas the Rockets, like if they really want to try to compete with this, they might try all out, where the top teams are just kind of chilling and like, not necessarily saying like we're going to make it in, but, like they'll try against the top teams, but maybe against the lower teams, they'll be like, we'll see. I don't think that this is necessarily a tank move, especially because like it's made so like every team, or I guess every division, has like kind of like a similar strength of schedule, essentially.
Sort of, but like, I mean, if you're a really good team and you have a chance to take a game over your division rival who's also like has the same record, you're gonna beat them. You're gonna take it. You know? Like, there's no reason for you not to try. But for a team that doesn't care, like that's like, a team like the Spurs, I could see the Spurs just resting everybody and say whatever. Like, I don't care. But
Hmm.
I don't see a winning team dropping out of that tournament just to play. I guess you would drop out, you would lose on purpose, and you would play the weaker teams that also lost. So, I mean, if you wanted to screw with it, like if you thought that the quarterfinal losers, I guess I don't think they all play at the same time, right? They don't all play at the same time, because
I
if they
don't think so. I think they
did,
play different weeks.
then you can watch the other three teams play, see if you want to play them, and then just lose and say, you know what, the best teams, I'm not ready for you. I'm going to wait a couple months later down the line when I have someone who is injured, and just, I'm not going to try. I'll play you at full health. How about that? We'll take another time down the chance. So, like that's how I see it working.
I feel like it's so weird that we're like trying to think of like a strategic way that teams are thinking about playing these games, because like as a head coach, as a team, you obviously like I don't, this might be kind of a different subtopic for another podcast, but I don't think teams are ever like, I mean, okay, maybe very situationally like the Mavericks last season, but I don't think teams are purposely trying to lose. Like teams are trying to win when they can, no matter if they're tanking or not. Um, so it's
There's
like
some games that teams are okay with losing, and there's some that they are not, especially in tanking situations.
yeah, more so than like trying to purposely lose, I guess. Yeah. Um, yeah, I guess that's a better way to put it. This might be a hot take, and I mean, we can expand on this in another podcast if we don't have enough time here, but I got to be honest with you guys. I think that there's only one team that's really going to be trying to like quote unquote tank this year, and it's because I think they may not have enough talent to even be that good against good teams anyways. Um, so they might as well just bottom out, and I think that's the Spurs. I think every other team if currently constructed, has a chance to win games this year, no matter who they play. That's honestly how I feel. I feel like each team collectively has enough talent. We can go through the bottom 4 or 5 teams last year, and I think either A or maybe both. But either A, they've added veteran talent, B, they've added a new head coach who has some real pedigree, or 3, they have some proven young player or 2 young players that are going to see improvement. And you can say Magic, Pistons, Rockets all fit that build. Jazz still have Markkanen. They have some new young talent in as well. I mean, what other teams are we talking here? The Hornets have some new young talent. I still think the Hornets are probably a year or 2 out. I think the Wizards are a year or 2 out, and I think the Spurs are a year or 2 out. But I think at least the Hornets and Wizards have a good enough foundation of talent where they feel like they can at least win games. But the Spurs, I feel like, are gonna be the worst team in the West. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good. The more I think about it, the more I think is that nothing is going to change based on like this tournament. Nothing really is going to change because if a good team is playing a good team, they're gonna try. If you see the Celtics having to go up against like the 76ers in the regular season setting, they're gonna try. In this setting, they're gonna try. But it might just come off as an illusion because if you lose the tournament, what happens? You just play the team that the other team, like if the Celtics lost in this round and the 76ers moved on, the Celtics are just going to play them later in the season, right? They're just going to make up that game some other time. So it's just like it feels like just an illusion, you know?
Right. Like either way, whether it
of the
was regular
tournament.
season or not, it wouldn't matter that much.
It's a good time period where you're having really good games. That's all it is. That's just a
I
good
agree.
time period that you're pitting the best teams against each other. And so I think fans will think like, oh, this tournament's actually interesting, but really it's just a way to spin a lot of good games in a short like stint.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Gage, because that was going to be my next point. Is like I feel like that this midseason tournament is just an illusion because at the end of the day, what are all these major leagues? Like they are businesses. They're here to provide entertainment. Yes, they're here to, make a sport interesting and fun. But what are they trying to do? They're trying to make money. So I have this article pulled up, if it still shows it. So it's the average TV viewers. Of course, it's not going to show me. But anyways, from from 2 seasons ago to last season, NBA viewership for the just regular season games went down about 20,000 people, which isn't a lot, but considering that, 3-4 years ago, it was even higher than it was now. Like they need more eyes on regular season games. How do you get more eyes on regular season games? You have to make them important. And how do you make them important? Well, 2 things. Make sure your stars play, which we'll talk about here in a second, and make the regular season games mean something. And that's what it is. And if you make 4 out of your 82 games important, that's 5% of your season. So if every team's like viewership went up because 5% of their games were important, then the viewership, I'm expecting the NBA to probably have their highest viewership on a national level go up significantly.
But it doesn't even feel like it's that because it's like but like it feels like it's just a restructuring of the regular season schedule, like a retime, like you're just changing it, but really they're making up the other games. So It just gives the illusion of
it's still 82.
It's still 82, but you're spinning all these games in one spot.
Yeah. So, is there anything else you guys want to add for the midseason tournament?
I gave you $2, Sam, so you could buy that thing.
Oh, it was not. No, it's too late now. I was wondering why you sent me $2.
I just sent you $2. Now register, all right, and accept the cookies.
Yeah. All I'm saying is something that would make this really interesting and make those bottom teams definitely try, whether they want to or not. But I feel like if you win this midseason tournament, you should be guaranteed a playoff spot, not a play-in.
Whoa, no, that's too much. That's too much.
You just all right. LeBron,
Hey.
80, you're gone for the season.
So basically,
they're
playoff games. Basically, Sam, they're playoff games at that point.
Yeah, but here's the thing: what are the odds? What are the odds that a play-in team? So a team that is in the bottom 18 teams in the league. No, not even. Yeah, bottom 18. What are the odds that one of those teams would actually win it? Like, in all seriousness.
All right, Sam. Here's a compromise. How about the team that wins gets a tiebreaker over all NBA teams? How about that? You know.
I like that.
Then, like, if you have a tie, then you'll break it. You just that's the ultimate tiebreaker right there.
Yeah, I like that because a playoff berth off of like a mid-season tournament is too much, dude. It's too much stakes because.
Hey, here's the thing. Is this important?
Hold on.
Sam,
let's say
whoever wins, I'm calling up to see if I can hop on and play for a few games.
I'm saying. Like, because then at that point that is another thing though, because if you're on the roster to make the play-in, you got to be guaranteed a spot on the playoff roster. You know what I mean? Like, you deserve that roster spot. But on the flip side of it, let's say you're a guy like Giannis or Embiid who's, God forbid they break their leg, sprain an ankle. They can't play for the midseason tournament. So you're telling me you're basically moving the goalpost because of basically an experimental, midseason tournament based on not much merit off of 1 year that you get hurt. Like, I just feel like if there's a star that gets hurt, it's just going to be the most rawest deal ever. Because you're not going to be there in the one season that they move the goalpost to how you got to make the playoffs. Like, that's just too much. It's just too much
All
risk.
I'm saying is they've been moving the goalpost for the last few years with this play-in tournament. Just saying.
Not really though, because
a 10 seed can make the playoffs.
But they have to beat the higher seed to get there still.
Before the playoffs. Has it worked for any team yet?
I don't think so.
Has a 10 seed made it? I know Nine's made it a couple.
Yeah, I was gonna say a 9 seed has, I think. Yeah, for that, in that situation, a 10 seed has to win 2 back-to-back games on the road. Like, that's really tough with playoff implications. So at least you're not making it easy for them. You're like their backs against the wall.
All I'm saying is, and I'm not 100% for this. I'm not gonna defend what I said. I just was like, what if they like this? That's the ultimate incentive to try in this, if you want to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
If you want to make
the games incentive of.
But let's see what happens in this in-season tournament, because I can probably guarantee you that whoever wins this will most likely already be in the playoffs. It's not going to be a play-in team.
I don't agree with that. I don't
agree with that either. Well, whoever wins should get a bye to the championship. How about that?
Whoever there should just get a Western Conference or Eastern Conference berth. How about that?
Yeah, a Western Conference berth.
Okay, now you guys are going a little too far with that one. So let's talk about the new NBA rest rules. So they came out, and what's funny is earlier this summer, we came out with the Stars and Superstars podcast. And we decided, okay, so what's the qualifications for a star? What's the qualifications for a superstar? Unless if you're Paul and you just have the Paul qual. But the NBA actually came out with, what they define a star, because that's going to be implemented with this NBA rest rules. So real fast, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to show the list of all the players. I'm not going to read them out loud, but there's 49 players that fit this description of what they saw as a star.
New fantasy draft board?
What?
Nothing.
Van Fleet's on that roster. Wow.
Van Fleet is a star. Fantasy.
I like that. Van Fleet's a star on my team.
Yep. So let's see. Yeah, it's and it's a simple criteria. If you've been named an All-Star and All-NBA in the previous 3 seasons, you're marked as a star.
3. Yeah.
Yep. So there's a bunch of teams that have a couple. Some teams, I think almost every team has one, with I think a few exceptions.
Hey, Ben Simmons. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Dude, I was going to say, did you see the Warriors? They got 4 players. They can't rest anybody together.
Yep. The Bucks will have 3. The Timberwolves have 4. So there's just a bunch
Bucks
of these.
Have 3 players now as well.
Yep, because they got rid of Drew.
Yep.
But who does Celtics have now? Celtics
have 3. They're big 3.
But did this include? Oh yeah.
Who?
Okay. So I guess Porzingis isn't part of that. But anyways, so that means that you cannot rest. I believe you cannot rest back-to-back games if you are on this list if you are healthy, and you can't have if you have more than one guy on your team. They both can't rest the same game.
You can't rest back-to-back games, but you can rest one of those. You can rest one of the front end or back end of a back-to-back, so that doesn't change.
No, I'm just saying like 2 games in a row you cannot rest if you are healthy.
If you're one guy.
Yeah, but that's people are already doing that.
And whether it's a back-to-back or not.
People are already doing that.
Typically.
Yeah.
Some people still rest both.
I think
wait,
you're
saying they don't do that?
They do that.
They do. But some people rest both still.
People already rest one and then you play the other one, but like.
Oh, that's what you're saying. I thought you were saying.
That's what people do.
Teams,
Yeah,
but that'll still happen. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there's been games where like the Bucks rested Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, and Giannis. We won't be able to see that anymore because you can't healthy rest. You can't healthy rest 2 stars on the same game.
Yeah. That's the change up. So
that's the big change.
Yeah.
And I think one team it's the biggest for is the Clippers. I think it's the Clippers that it affects, I think the Lakers too. Both LA teams it affects a lot.
Nope. LeBron is immune.
Well,
yep, he's immune because the rule is I think if you play either 35,000 minutes or 1,000 games.
That rule.
Yeah.
And I think the only 2 players that fit that rule, I think, is Chris Paul and LeBron James, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. But they're both
How many games
40.
is it?
1,000 games, including playoff games.
I wonder how many games Curry's played. Has to be a lot.
Should be up there.
But he also had ankle issues like his first 3 years, so maybe that doesn't matter anyways. Because he sat a lot of games his first 3 years because he got hurt like organically. But no, man, I think it's a good rule change overall. And I'm gonna kind of throw this tidbit in there. I think for fantasy basketball, it's going to be great. Because you're not gonna have to worry about guys sitting out.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, and for that rule change, also though, just for the entertainment purposes of the games, whether you're watching the game at home or watching the game in person, you're not gonna have to, hopefully deal with multiple stars, sitting out games. If you order, Bulls versus Philly tickets, I mean, I don't know what's gonna happen with Harden, but you're at least gonna be able to see, pending Harden, let's just say he's on the team, you're gonna at least gonna be able to see, DeMar versus Embiid or Embiid versus LaVine. You're not gonna see, the bench or I guess the regular starter kind of guys.
Caruso versus Embiid.
Right, yeah. No, you're not gonna see Embiid versus, Tyrese Maxey.
Ayo.
You know what I mean? Ayo, yeah. So yeah, I think for overall purposes, I gotta be honest, I think when we're talking about rule changes and, this versus the in-season tournament, I think this matters a little bit more than the in-season tournament overall for entertainment purposes.
But how do they ensure that, like, if you did have 2 players with like broken legs, like what are you gonna do?
Well, it's healthy resting.
Yeah. But like that's the thing. Last season, they had Damian Lillard sit out the last 10 games to a calf injury, but he didn't even have a calf injury.
That's something that I think will still be a thing.
No, he said he didn't.
Well.
Yeah.
Maybe
so that's what I think. Like, I think, especially if they're coming back from injury, I think that they're still gonna milk these few games where he can play, but we don't want him to be a healthy. Because here's the thing: is especially on the Bucks, that means if Damian rests, you can't have Giannis rest. You can't have Chris Middleton rest. So you have to strategically tell Dame when he can or can't play. So why not just have that injury linger for a week and then have him be even more prepared to play. So instead of having to rest his second game back, he could rest his third or fourth game back and have that week-long extra rest to prepare. So I think that that's something that a lot of teams are going to do, especially when players are coming back from injury.
To be honest with you, I'm willing to bet that there's going to be some kind of reporting protocol. I bet there's going to be where, like, if, let's say, like we just said, like Damian has some kind of like shin or calf injury, let's say in April, or not April, that's too late. Let's say like February 10th. And by March 10th, if he is still reporting a calf issue, they're going to have to do like some actual, like, I don't know, there's gonna have to be some kind of MRI or some kind of test
NBA
to
like a third
prove.
party, yeah, to come
Yeah,
out and
well,
be like yeah, he can't go.
well, it doesn't even have to be a third party. I think it just has to be the actual Bucks medical staff because the Bucks medical staff technically works for the NBA. I'm pretty sure. So like if they know that they're just trying to protect him, like they're gonna have to report that. And if they don't report that, then there's gonna be repercussions if they find out that he's just resting. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's gonna have to be some kind of like reporting protocol where you can't cheat the system and just rest guys. But like at the same time, if you're a guy like Embiid or Giannis who have had injuries, let's say to their knee in the past or whatever, back or whatever, you can really just say like, "Oh, coach, like my back," or the medical staff, my back is hurting today. I don't think I can practice." And your back could be fine. And there's no way to for anyone to prove that you don't feel that way because it's your own body. Then that just is what it is. So there's going to be some kind of middle ground where it's going to have to be based on what the player says versus the actual medical diagnosis of the medical staff. Uh, but like, I find it hard to believe that a medical staff or like the NBA would tell, especially a franchise or NBA star player, that like, no, you have to play, or like, I know that you're not hurt anymore, or you're not feeling pain because it's been X amount of time. Like, injuries linger on for a long time, like sometimes forever, like sometimes throughout the career of players. So, I don't really know how they're going to mandate exactly like how players feel. But if it's really just based on the medical staff and what they think, then yeah, there's going to be some kind of reporting protocol.
Yeah, and another thing that this does is it makes it so teams can't purposely tank. Last year, and you can see it in this article, last year Bradley Beal was shut down for the last 10 games of the season. Damian Lillard was shut down for the last 11 when both of their teams were eliminated from playoff contention. And they put it down as injury, but like you need to basically, and I think the NBA is going to step in and it's like if someone's injured for that long, especially late in the season for a team that is not in playoff contention, they're going to be checking in on that player like is he good to play, you know. So it's like an anti-tank thing too because like it happens in NBA, we know it happens, but the NBA just doesn't want it to happen, you know.
See, the problem with that though is that the teams that are wanting to tank don't have multiple stars or else they wouldn't be tanking. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like, sure, you can rest your guys, but as long as it's not every other, if as long as they don't have back-to-backs, as far as I understand the rules correctly, as long as they don't have back-to-backs, then it doesn't matter, you know?
Yeah. Yep. And I feel like probably under this, why is the NBA doing this? Improve fan and public perception. I feel like that's probably the biggest thing
Yeah.
because and I feel like a lot of these too, like, I mean, and over the last year or two, they have been announcing like prior days before, like Kawhi Leonard, he played Friday, but he's going to be sitting on Sunday. There were games. I mean, and it sucks for fantasy owners too. Like 3-4 years ago, where like someone's perfectly healthy, and then it's like, oh yeah, he's not playing today, rest, like day of, like, and that still happens too. Just some of the bigger names, especially with like that have injury problems, like a Kawhi Leonard or even Steph Curry. I think a little bit last year was like they come out and say a couple days early or a day before, like, hey, he's going to be resting tomorrow. So
Yeah.
yeah, and then there are fines for teams that do, because there's the 5 rules, that they're going to be fined $100,000 for the first violation, 250,000 for a second violation, and 1.25 1.25 million for a third violation. and then we'll be fined another $1 million for every time after that. So, I mean, that's going to be very taxing if these teams do not follow this, which is absurd.
After like the sixth or seventh time, it's gonna be eating in the owners' pockets for sure.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
So, and I understand that you want the maximum amount of participation from your best players, but like in the end, like, is this, looking back as this as a business move? Like, why do they necessarily need to do this? Because attendance last year was at an all-time high for the NBA, and also the highest sellouts that they had during the regular season as well. Highest capacity, 97% of all NBA arenas were that. I know there are some that have standing room, so that kind of does trickle in some extra percentages. But most sellouts ever in an NBA season, most fans attended, over 22 million. So is this to get more people in the doors, to get that to over 100? Like, is it to make tickets more expensive so the NBA is more profitable? I don't know. I feel like that the fines are crazy for just making sure that all these players play the most games possible when healthy.
They're just trying to set the standard is all.
So
shout out Calvin Ridley.
Shout out Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, I just had to do
it. Okay. So, is there anything else you guys need to add about the rest rules?
No, I've been sitting here thinking about how they can better enforce it, like penalize you for like sitting games, but like making it more like things linger on if you sit a game. Kind of like, yeah, you can sit if you're healthy, but then like you have a few more days before you have to be cleared. Let's say like but then like if you're cleared, yeah, like cleared before you can play again, but I don't know. I feel like there has to be some sort of outside source regulating it, but I'm trying to think of how they could make it so that you rest when you absolutely are actually hurt. And if you
you're hurt, then that doesn't count as your rest sit game.
But that's the thing; you can always just make up an injury, and so I'm trying to say what's stopping you from making. You just have to make up. Like, I think if you declare, here's something that could make people like scared. If you declare that you have this sort of injury, then you have to sit out some sort of, at minimum, this prescribed like amount of time. But then like if you're tanking, you tell them that they have like some sort of injury, and then they'll sit. Like, I can't see an easy way to balance this against the tanking teams and the good teams. I don't know.
Right.
Because the good teams. Sorry.
Go ahead. I
was gonna say because the good teams would hate it if they needed to rest someone and then they said, all right, let's fake an injury. But then if you fake the injury and then like you have to sit out like what is recommended for an average calf strain by mandatory, then you can't just be faking injuries, because if you skip one game, you have to skip like a couple weeks because you said you had this sort of injury. Now, the taking teams would be cool with that. Like, they'll be like, oh, yeah, this dude has a broken leg. Sit him out for the entire season. Don't penalize us. And so if you had that kind of thing, like, it just – the tanking teams win there, but that is a way to get the good playing teams, the ability not to rest.
But the NBA are going to be cracking down and, like, double-checking, making sure that, like, hey, this guy is actually injured, So I think that it kind of like what you said of, like, teams trying to find a loophole, Gage. I think that we will probably see a high spike in guys that are out for sickness. Like, I'm not saying that was ever something that teams purposely did, because I mean there was an arrest rule. Like they could just come out and say like, yeah, he's resting. But like now it's like, oh, an undisclosed illness.
Yeah.
You know, I think that could be probably the biggest spike that we've seen in those kind of like disclosed like injury reports.
Yeah,
so
like for the good teams, just say if they're gonna rest, they have to rest a minimum of like a week or something. But then
yeah,
that,
but
that
like what's the time frame for an illness? You know,
a week.
So that's
Just make them. No one's going to want to sit out. Like
Then if you're like
maybe
really sick,
maybe you get a few. If you're
you
really
know,
sick, then a week.
but then it's like if I'm really sick on Monday, I want to be able to play for my team on Friday, Saturday back to back. But I can't play on Monday because I'm throwing up. You know, that's not my fault.
Yeah, and that's not on the and you're now you're penalizing the player, not the team.
No, because it's a week long. Like a week long, he needs to sit. Like a week is not a lot of time, but if you're gonna declare that you're sick, just take a week off.
But I don't know about
That's
that
because
people can get over sicknesses. Yeah, people can get over sicknesses in 20 or 48 hours.
What that incentivizes is for the player to actually play sick.
Play a flu game?
That you would play flu games.
we don't
basically play flu games, which is like that's crazy.
Hey, this man really said that, and Corona's still a thing.
I can't think of it. I can't think of
Corona's
a way to
still
like
a thing,
solve
and you said that.
Well, that's what like I'm thinking, like a way to enforce it. But what I'm thinking now is like if you do the rule I'm saying, you're enforcing flu games and people to play through things.
We don't want that, Gage.
Exactly.
The flu game happened in a playoff game.
Exactly. So I'm like,
this is regular season.
That's not a solution at all. I was like, that can't be the solution. So I was like, I don't know how to fix that because you can't just because if you do that, then people are really gonna play through injuries. So it's just really like.
Hey, Coach, I got some bad diarrhea, but I'm trying to play today, bro.
I'm not trying to be out for a week, man.
Yeah, because if I don't play, I'm going to be out for a week. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, they don't want that, but...
So you want players to, like, push it to the limit.
No, but I'm saying that is a way to get them to push it to the limit, but you want to go... We got to pull back a little bit, and I don't know how to pull back.
Yeah, that might be pushing them to see a little bit too hard. Because I feel like even with, like... an injury, like let's say you have like a little ankle sprain, but it's not like that bad, you know. And let's say like the regular mandated time for an ankle sprain is like 3 weeks. I feel like that's pretty average for a sprain. Then like you could be good from that sprain in a week and a half, but then like you can't play after that. But then at that point, like you should be good to play after if you can, and it kind of just hurts the whole rule as a whole because they want people to play. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. That's tough.
Yeah,
it's too hard to fix. People are gonna find loopholes.
Yeah, we'll notice them within those first few weeks. So, but especially we're going to see a flu game in one of those mid-season tournament games, right, guys?
Mm-hmm, definitely. I'm down.
Yeah, definitely. It's that serious.
But is there anything else you guys need to add about mid-season tournament or rest rules? Are you in favor of both or neither or just one of them after talking about them?
I'm in favor of the injury rule. I'm indifferent about the in-season tournament. I'll give it a chance, though.
Gage? That's is that yeah, whatever that means. That's gonna
it is what it is.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll just say mid-season tournament. I think it's silly, but let's make let's make semi-important games more important. I guess, and with the rest rules, just try to de-incentivize tanking. I guess so. It is what it is. We'll see. Yeah. But once again, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Momentum MVP. Follow our Facebook page at MVP Momentum Podcast. And check us out on YouTube at MVP Momentum Podcast. I've been Sam Holcroft.
Gage Zollicoffer.
I haven't Payton Thompson.
Thanks for listening.